So with our account set up, Unity set up with Android build support, and our Oculus Quest in developer mode, we are ready to set up a project and have it build to Android. The first thing you need to know about this is that we can still use a desktop headset, such as an Oculus Rift S, a Vive, or even the Oculus Quest with an Oculus Link cable to develop and test our hardware, or our experiences. So to get started, we need to install the plugin to a Unity project that is going to handle the middleware, sort of the API in between the hardware and the experience. So to do that, we are going to go into the Package Manager. This is under Window, Package Manager. If you only see a few things, you may need to hit this reload button. But all the way down at the bottom, alphabetically, we should have a package called XR Plugin Management, and we want to install that. XR Plugin Management is a package that manages installing and uninstalling other packages and other plugins so that we don't have to do that part. You know, you see Windows Mixed Reality, Windows XR, Viewer AR, Oculus, Android. Don't install any of those. Don't touch any of these things. It's a very confusing world, but they made an XR plugin management is the tool that's going to handle all that confusing stuff for us. Great. So, under Project Settings, we have a new menu that says XR Plugin Management. We have options for changing the plugins for desktop builds, Android builds, and WebGL builds. We can ignore WebGL. We will build for Oculus on the desktop so that we can use the Oculus Link cable in our headsets to test it. I also have a Rift S, so I can now use the Rift S. If I had like an HP Reverb or something, I could check these other ones. If you want to develop for Steam VR, you'll look in for the OpenVR headset, and that's in beta right now. For Android, we also want to check Oculus. And that should be all we need to do with that. We now have settings for Oculus, but you don't need to worry about any of these. There are some more settings we need to change. The next are in our build settings. So because we're building for an Oculus Quest as a standalone device, that means we're building a standalone piece of Android software. So we need to change Unity to tell it to use Android. The earlier you hit this switch platform button and switch to telling Unity that this is intended for an Android device, the better. Because as you import more assets and more files and images and sounds into your project, when you switch platform, every single one of those needs to get re-imported because Unity will compress and change them into different file types behind the scenes that are designed for the different build platforms. And that's different for Android than it is for PC. So if you have a very large project with lots of stuff in it and you hit switch platform, that could take a long time. I'm going to just add this sample scene into the build for testing. All right. We're almost ready. We have to go into our project settings and hit player. We could also find that just as a shortcut in the build settings window under player settings, a little button there. That'll open it right up. It's already open, it's right here. So under player, up top, default company and product name. By default, the product name is the name of your Unity project. And maybe you named this something like Assignment 2 or Final Project. And if you don't change this, then I'm going to get a handful of submissions that are default company.final project. That's no good. I don't like that. So you should change your company name to your name so that I will immediately recognize it as someone who is grading your assignments, and product name to the name of something. I'm going to keep this one at 0 to Quest. Next, we need to go in and scroll through some other settings. We need our minimum API level to be KitKat or above. That's level 19. This is currently the supported minimum level on Unity 2019.4, but if you're using an earlier version of Unity, like 2019.1 or 2018, whatever, then you have other options, and you may need to go in here and change it to level 19. Luckily, if you forget that, when you try to go build and deploy it to the Quest, it's going to give you an error that tells you exactly what you did wrong. Amazing. If you scroll all the way down and you see XR settings, no, stop it. Don't touch this. That is legacy. Unity has updated that. We're using this plugin manager instead. We're not using any of these settings. We can just safely ignore them. You may have seen somewhere online or in other guides that you said that we need to disable Vulkan for Oculus Quest. Oculus now supports Vulkan as a graphic API, and it's not even enabled right now. I think I could add it if I wanted to. It's great. We can just completely ignore that. With all that done, I'm ready to build my scene. But I don't have anything in my scene. The packages that we need to make something. One is XR Legacy Input Handlers. This should already have been installed when you installed the XR plugin management. That's going to give you a component called the Tracked Pose Driver, which will move a game object's position to match a position of a piece of the hardware, like your controller or your headset. So that's the minimum of all you need, is just to throw one of those on the main camera and you're ready to develop for VR. But most of the time, we want to use a different plugin. Unity has made a bunch of components and game objects that will make developing for VR a lot easier. And it's in it currently at the time of recording, and June 2020. It is a preview package. It's called the XR Interaction Toolkit 0.9.4. It's coming out soon. XR Interaction Toolkit. It's in beta. It can be a little buggy. It doesn't have great documentation, but we like it because it still makes things easy. It's still pretty good. And it's only going to improve, we hope. So the XR Interaction Toolkit, it's a bunch of tools and resources that do some of the hard stuff for us. One of the things it does for us is I can go to the game object XR menu, which is a new menu that this toolkit has provided, and I can make like a stationary XR rig, and it moved the main camera, and it put a tracked pose driver on the main camera, and it put some other new custom components in. It has some by default they're ray interactors, which are laser pointers. So I put that there. So let's throw some cubes around and make a little testing scene. There we go. Whatever. Avoid with cubes. Love it. All right. So now I'm ready to build for VR. I go into my build settings. I make sure my headset is plugged in. It can be connected as an Oculus Link device at this time. That is okay. And if it is, then all you need to do is have the Oculus software open, and you should have green check marks under the Devices tab. You hit play. And if you've set up that loader, then it's loading. It's going to give me some... I have to hit a checkbox that says enable Oculus Link on the headset. Yes, please. Okay. There we go. And you can see I'm in VR right inside of the editor. Amazing. But my computer has a 2080 Ti. It has a very powerful graphics card in here. I could have made this experience really, really intensive, and I wouldn't have even noticed. But the Oculus Quest is an Android headset. So maybe when I build for Android, it'll completely stop working. So we need to test on the Android. We can't just build and move on with our lives. So, trust me. So, in our build settings, we have a scene run device. We're going to go down and check the Oculus Quest. Beautiful. If you don't see it here, we hit refresh. If you still don't see it, you want to double check that you're in developer mode. That's with the Oculus app. Then we want to build and run. So building is just creating an APK. So we'll make a folder called builds right in our project folder, and 0 to Quest. And we're going to build it. So this is going to take a minute. I'll talk over it. We're going to build it and run it. Running it is just taking the file and putting it onto the Oculus Quest. That's all that running is doing. Building is generating everything, and we have the option to just build. If, for some reason, you hit build and you don't want to run, or maybe you want to test out somebody else's APK that they've built, then you need to get it from your computer onto the Oculus Quest without going through this entire building process again. And you can do that with the SideQuest software, which there should be a link to. And you just click Install APK file from folder on your computer. You head to your Unity project file, your builds folder. When it's done building, it'll pop up there, and that's where your APK is, or wherever you can get it, you download it or whatever. So you can use the software side quest to send those .apk files, which is the Android equivalent of a .exe or a .app for on OS X file. Hey, I'm done building. So let me just show you that again here. Projects, Unity. There it is, .apk. But because I was in Unity, I hit build and run. It should have done that part for me. Now at this point, it should automatically have launched and be open on the Quest. But that doesn't always happen, and maybe you want to go back later and you're not just testing it right now. To find it, it's under the Library tab in a section called Unknown Sources. To get to Unknown Sources, if you don't see that in the Library menu, you will need to restart your Oculus in order to get that to show up. That happens if you just enabled Developer Mode. But then you can find it and launch it, and one thing to notice is the graphical difference, the difference in lighting between the desktop and the Android Quest standalone versions. Important to pay attention to that. And now you are good to go and ready to rock and develop for the Quest. There's only one more thing I want to mention, one more sort of standard setup step that we're going to take, which is part of the Legacy Input Helpers package. And that is under the Assets menu. It's the Seed XR Inputs Bindings option. So what's happening that does is under your input settings, axes, you have all these default axes, like how the space bar is jump. And what the Assets Seed XR Inputs button does, and I just hit it, and that's all you need to do is click it, is it adds a bunch of axes that have names and that are correctly mapped to controller triggers and buttons and grip buttons and things that you can now use the old input system, just input.getAccess, and then find the name of what you want right here. If you've never touched the input system before, then that doesn't make any sense. But I just want to remind you, if you're looking at this video for a project setup, that's definitely something that you want to remember to do, unless you're using the new input system. Anyway, so that is how you get from nothing set up on the Quest. To really quickly review the Unity steps, you want to go into the Package Manager, and you want to install the XR Plugin Management, XR Legacy Input Helpers, which should be by default. Show Preview Packages will let you see the XR Interaction Toolkit. You want to install that one. Inside of your build settings, you want to make sure you switch to Android and that you can see your device. And if you don't see it, you got to go debug that. Make sure it's plugged in and in developer mode. In the player settings, in your project settings under player, you want to make sure you're at least at API level 19 for KitKat, that you change your company and product name, and that this will also change the package name. You don't touch the XR settings at the bottom. And then you want to, with the Interaction Toolkit, there's a Game Object XR menu, which can get you started. You don't have to use it. All you really need is a main camera with a tracked pose driver component. Everything else will work out of the box. In fact, if you try to set this to orthographic or change some camera settings, it's going to completely ignore these settings and override them with the headset settings. Yeah. Have fun. Make something weird.